But in the meantime, hi, I'm Alexi or Alexander. I head marketing and community here at Ammalgam, and I'm joined by Julian Galwa, aka Will, and he is the mind behind Ammalgam, the founder, the head of development, and he leads everything, and he is the one that's going to be telling you all the technical stuff. And also, I'm going to be forcing him to ask me some marketing questions today, because we're going to be delving into some more marketing-based stuff than usual in terms of where we're going, what we're doing, and what we've been up to. So I'll be doing a lot more yapping than usual. But first off, Will, do you want to give me a brief update on where we're at in terms of beta progress and what the timeline is currently?
Yeah, we are trying to be code complete next week. So in the audit process, we've gone through two iterations of audits and with 3 different auditors, Cantina, OX Macro, and Chain Security. So we've been working since July on fixing the findings from the last series of audits, and we are on track to be code complete by the end of next week. Then after we're code complete, we'll ask the auditors, or we've already asked the auditors, to be prepared to review the code again, make sure that we fixed everything. And then depending on how that goes, we're hoping for obviously you fixed everything looks good, but there could be you almost fixed everything, or there could be you fixed everything, but then we found this other thing kind of conversation. But we're hoping for the first of those 3 of you fixed everything looks good. And we will launch the protocol and have more finalized details on what that looks like at the end of this month based on what the auditors say.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think the updates that we publish on the website, those are all public, right? I know they're intended generally for investors, but also to build in public. So all of that is technically shareable on this call. Well, I'm just checking that before I say something.
Yeah, we wouldn't post it on the website if there's. I try to do an update once a month for both the community and our investors who've trusted us with their confidence and dollars. So I just have been getting into a every other month pattern. So I just posted the September and October updates to our docs. You can go to our docs, click on updates, go to September, October, and see those. But yes, they're available for everybody in our commitment to try to build in public and think out loud.
Hell yeah, because I wanted to talk about the vaults and the option that we might change the approach that we had to launching. And I know this is very early, but I think that it is discussed as a premise of something that we might do. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and what we're currently thinking for that if we go ahead with it?
Yeah, so the idea for the vaults is to potentially start a pre-deposit campaign where people can start earning some sort of incentives, whether that be a points program. A lot of the stuff is a little bit vague right now because we're still ironing out the plan and we don't want to prematurely promise anything. But the high level plan would be that we would start allowing deposits through our website. Those deposits would actually go into a existing vault earning yield. We've talked to a few teams about this. One example might be like a Morpho vault, say one being run by Gauntlet, that the pre-deposits would actually go into, and so they'd be earning yield just through Gauntlet's existing vaults and also be earning points for Ammalgam. And then once we actually launch the protocol, that we would move those deposits from Gauntlet into Ammalgam in a sort of gradual manner so that we're not throwing all of the money in immediately and that we're trying to take a gradual scaling up of the assets in Ammalgam. And so the reason for this is twofold. We want to make people feel comfortable and confident that we are being careful with their funds. And this is also a new protocol. So we don't want to rush to put millions of dollars into the protocol all at once. people can do that, but this gives a gradual approach of basically turning on the gas, and also an earlier opportunity for people to earn points in the safest way possible.
Yeah, and that also leads us to the option of if we do that and we implement a point system, which I think the plan is to do regardless of the vaults, but I think we'd be looking to implement them for the vaults ideally if we did proceed with this. Then we would also be hopefully at that point looking to implement a referral program, which would be able to help the organic marketing side of things. And we've been looking at, from the marketing team, until recently, more of a explosive launch where we save a lot of the marketing budget, most of the marketing budget, almost all of it, for once we launch. And then within that first couple of weeks, we have everything lined up to go at that moment. But with the shift towards potentially more of a slow rollout, then it looks like we'll be utilizing that same budget in more of a month or a month and a half rather than the first 2 weeks. But once the vaults are live, then you can expect to see a lot more impactful and larger scale marketing activity coming out to promote Ammalgam. So definitely keep an eye out on that. With that said, unless you wanted to add something, Will, to that, I don't know if I missed anything.
I just was saying, it sounds like you're saying that right now your marketing is not impactful.
No, I said larger scale, more impactful. We're talking bigger bucks behind it, bigger scale. Everyone knows more money, more impact. So with that said, this is more targeted towards the marketing team as a topic of discussion, and the community team and the people that are on the day-to-day, although the developers of Ammalgam are incredibly present and they answer probably actually more questions than we do, or just as many in, for example, Discord, because there's a lot of technical stuff. I do want to break down who's currently helping support the developer team from the marketing community perspective. So there's myself, who make sure that everything works, except apparently Twitter Spaces. And then there's Misha or Casper, who runs the community side of things, the X account and everything like that. He does a great job managing Discord and making sure that we we do our best to combat the eternal issue of being botted and trying to tackle that. And then we have Galina, who works on all the long form content that we see, which I'll talk about shortly. And she does a great job working on all the different articles. She sometimes shitposts from the intern account, but her main focus is articles, the newsletter that goes out monthly. If you haven't subscribed already, you can go find the link on our website. Same with the blogs, the blog posts. We've got I'll talk about that in a moment. And then we've got Henry in the BD analytics side. He is doing the Lord's the Lord's work in the BD department and helping us get as much data as possible so that we know exactly where we're headed for launch. And he's the insider in Discord. But that's the team behind, because I realized the other day that there isn't really a time that the marketing team comes out and we say, hi, how are you doing? It's always, we have the bi-weekly developer call, and then it's me saying hi briefly, but we don't really give a full rundown of the squad. I do quickly want to talk about long form content for Ammalgam. So that's primarily articles that until now have been on our Mirror account. And the process for those is, what we've been doing is we've been doing very technical articles. And because they're so technical, we've required Will himself to have to go through and check those. And that's quite an arduous thing to ask the person who's trying to make sure that everything runs and get Ammalgam shipped, to take some time to read through and make sure that everything makes sense in a very technical few-page article, especially if you're trying to pump out one a week, which was the target that we had, and we were doing it for a bit. But that's been a bit of a challenge just from a workload management and what to prioritize. So we're planning to shift that a bit towards what you'll be seeing is a lot more introductory level articles of more basics within DeFi, foundational stuff within Web3 and everything like that. And that'll allow us to target some more entry level users within the space, because Ammalgam is a very complex thing, and we also often talk in a very complex way, but we do also want to have that more entry level information available to people. And with that, we'll also be shifting to posting more content in article form on X. Some of it we've done with the intern account as well, but we'll also be doing it on the main account. I think we did one yesterday, and a lot of that is shifting from the Mirror, taking those articles and then repurposing them for this. But you should see within the next, hopefully, couple of weeks, maybe more, but I think a couple of weeks, you should start seeing a more steady rollout of those again with a slightly adjusted target audience and tone. But that will be no, we will still have the more complex articles as well for the engineers of the world. Will, I don't know if you want to add anything there towards your pains with having to review articles, but I know that you haven't loved having to juggle all of that. I know it's been a lot.
Yeah, God bless Galena for writing all these articles and then having to deal with me not reading them and then her having to bug me continuously. I feel like, yeah, it seems like maybe she's not doing as much as she really is because I am constantly the backlog as far as getting those published. So I think that's sometimes the crux of being a founder is that you're the problem for everything. If only you could come up with a plan for how to fix that issue, then it would get fixed, kind of stuff. And I don't know, heavy as the cross.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll work and do wonders to take a little bit of work off your desk. The other thing that I wanted to talk about from a community perspective, shifting away from the long form stuff, is the last couple of months have been a bit weird for us. So we've had a big downtrend in basically all of our metrics, but we're also happy about it. And we haven't talked about it because it's been a space-wide thing where two things have happened. First off, Twitter has purged an immense amount of bots. So although we've lost a lot of our following, a portion, and we've lost a portion of our general impressions on tweets that we do.
I mean, it wasn't a lot. It was, I think at the peak, we were at like 44K followers.
Well,
31.
12,000 or whatever it is still like a lot is. That's why I tried to correct myself there, but it's still like enough to see and be like, that's odd. Through that,
but do you ever lose them if they were never real?
That's true. And the proof of purchase there is the fact that the engagement rate has continued to rise and has gone up, and the verified follow accounts of the people that are paying for Twitter has continued to rise. That metric has sustained through and kept going upwards. So that is fantastic, because what we want at the end of the day is we don't want 100,000 followers but 60,000 bots. We want 40,000 followers but 40,000 friends. There's 40,000 real people that are coming in and interacting and aware of what we're doing and excited for it and present. And that's the goal. So it is nice to see in that way. And a big source of those bots in the first place, and another reason for that dropping off in the last week, was the fact that people have stopped farming for the Monad airdrop. So now that that's been finalized, a lot of the bots were probably from people trying to farm the Monad airdrop when we did a collaboration with Layer 3 and a couple of other things. And that has been a big impactor as well. But as I said, like, all the metrics that matter, that indicate real people, are up. And we do expect that trend to continue and for things to stabilize in terms of the rest of the metrics and continue to grow from there. So I just wanted to mention that briefly.
And I think the important thing here to say is that we always suspected that there was a ton of both bots on X as well as not real traffic on our website. And we tried to be, I think about, there's this really funny, I think there's a project, I'm not going to name the project, but I think it was in why can't I think of the ecosystem right now? My Mega ETH. So there's a project that was in the Mega ETH ecosystem, and they bragged about how they had like 1 million unique visitors or something like that. But they didn't have a product. They were still in testnet. And I always thought it was like, like there were all the memes on Twitter of are the users in the room now? Are they talking to you now? It's just, are these real users? And we also had, I don't know, something like 250,000 unique users, but we never wanted that metric because it was like not really sure if those were real. And we've always had a really my direction, and I think the entire team's focus has always been like, how do we find the real users? How do we measure? And I know we've now have a tool. Is it FOMO or
FOMO? Yeah,
FOMO?
FOMO.
That has actual analytics for wallets and like the people who are visiting. And it's really interesting for anyone who's like in the Sonic ecosystem. As soon as we started having more engagement with Sonic, it was really interesting because we saw maybe less traffic than we were getting from Monad, but much higher wallet value. Like we saw $1 million wallets like visiting our app that, and so it was like, oh wow, real users, right? Instead of this flood of what seemed like it was like, is this real or not? And yeah, I'm just reiterating what you already said, Alexi, but the analytics on our website as well with FOMO, I don't know, this is another conversation that just adding context to something that probably I'm not sure if anyone even gives a shit about, but we were trying to figure out how to filter out all the Monad testnet usage. And I think we actually had one of our engineers go and put a flag that we wouldn't log anything from Monad because it was just so low quality engagement. And the last thing I'll say before I get off on this kick is that we saw an absolute change in all the metrics on our website that happened as soon as the airdrop was announced. It was like the airdrop got announced, everyone knew that like the whatever airdrop you were entitled was done, and it's like the bots got turned off. It was like a whole fucking server farm somewhere in Nigeria like just turned off. So anyway, I'll stop talking now, but
Yeah, I think we've posted, I think it was twice we've posted monthly updates now since we got Formo to fully track the data. We have posted some data on DApp usage and everything from just the last 2 months. And I think the most recent one did use data that was taken from post Monad airdrop closing or like being announced. I think that is the case. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you go look, then that's the kind of more accurate data. And the following month, we will update that again. Although I think that ideally in a month's time, we will be on mainnet, but I think it will be around the end of November that we will be probably posting the most recent updates. So that'll be interesting to see for sure. The other thing that I wanted to discuss regarding community and where we're at and bots and everything like that is the additional factor that came into play with the bots being so prevalent with monad farming and just generally people who thought that like just coming in to say hi or just joining a Discord, for example, and sending one message would get them an airdrop rather than actually participating in the community and trying to have some sort of positive or longer lasting impact. That led to our Discord getting flooded a lot with some very low quality messages over the months, with some very spammy things, even with all the bot protection we have, with all the different things safety measures we put into place to try and mitigate those factors. That has led to us purging Discord from inactive users pretty frequently. So if there's an account that's inactive for 30 days, then generally we purge that once every couple of weeks. In addition to that, there's been like when people came in and there was a lot of low quality traffic, particularly with a couple of campaigns we did that accidentally ended up encouraging this bot activity, which is why we haven't repeated them. That has led to a lot of real people, I think, becoming less active because it's quite overwhelming when you're sitting there excited for this project that is trying to do their best to market themselves and grow, and then a bunch of bots just come in and they're spamming, and then you ask a question that people can barely see it because there's just 50 different people spamming random shit. So that's a shift that we've been really trying to combat, and I think we're getting there. And I think that it'll be, the Discord that we're at now is a lot less active, which is fine because it doesn't need to be right now. And that's the goal, is that safety measures and foundational stuff is put in place for when we launch, when there's real activity going on. It will be a real communal place to be where people can ask questions and talk about stuff and hang out and whatever they need, really. So that's the goal there. And I just wanted to mention that briefly. I know, Will, you've had some frustrations with Discord throughout the bot stuff. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, but I think that's it from my perspective, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've sometimes just gotten to this place where I don't know how real our community is going to be able to be until we have a product, right? And so I think it's very difficult to foster a community without a real product or a token. So I think I currently have general chat in our Discord server just muted because it's so just not meaningful. And I think, I don't know, I'm really excited to see this shift, because I'm hoping, exactly like you said, is that there's more room for people to actually get engaged and be a part of something, because there's not as much noise, and that we hope to have higher signal and lower noise, and that's like a more fertile ground for growing the community.
Yeah. And that's why we've been trying to use these monthly MAs, these bi-weekly engineering calls, to give everyone that is really wanting to be a part of the community and ask questions and get involved a space to do that live. And obviously we do answer all tickets. I mean, we do answer everyone we can in chat, and
This space was downloaded via spacesdown.com. Visit to download your spaces today.
Casper is really good at that and being on the ball. But we do try and focus our energy on these AMAs and the engineering calls. The only downside, or not the only downside, one of the big downsides of this call is that sometimes it's hard to, on Twitter or on Spaces, is that sometimes it's hard to get people to ask questions, or it's harder to interact with people in the same way as like a Discord chat. So that can be a bit frustrating. It is what it is. I can see that some people have asked questions under the tweet, so we will get to those at the end. For anyone, if you want to just ping a question or reply to the space, then we'll go through at the end. But yeah, that's just something else that I wanted to mention. In addition to that, in terms of the intern account, and this is the last marketing thing that I want to discuss before I have a very riveting question for Will about the general market, is the intern account and how we've been using it. So Ammalgam has an intern account, which is everyone has access to, and they post whatever they want. And that's the vibe that we've gone for. We've done some more structured stuff, but an intern account is a lot of effort. And I think the intern scene is a bit over diluted at the moment. And our goal with that is to shift it within the next month, as we launch Vault or our first thing on Mainnet, to be more mascot oriented. So we will be launching a mascot in addition to some overall renewed messaging across the entire branding that we have. And both those things together should help give the launch of Ammalgam a fresh feel to everyone, not just a fresh use case. So that's the goal there. It won't be anything visually massive. It will be more just, we'll be aligning how we talk about Ammalgam, how we define ourselves, and also we'll have a cool little mascot to go along with things that will be replacing the intern account, and that will be exciting. So do keep an eye out for that. Moving on from marketing stuff, I do have a question before we shift to random chit chat and any community questions. Is the recent balancer exploit, Will, I was wondering what you thought of, like, does that impact Ammalgam at all, or like how we're approaching things, or how you're thinking about stuff?
Oh, you opened up that can of worms, huh? I'll reiterate what I heard somebody else say on Twitter that I agreed with, which is I feel like the balancer exploit set the whole industry back 6 months to a year. And the reason for that is that they had multiple audits. They had done a formal verification with Satora, which is largely considered like the highest standard of security. And you're like, that failed somehow. That it wasn't new. They had been around for quite a while. And so I think that there's all these sort of things that we as a security, like in the security community, like deem as making something more safe, right? Which is sometimes it's time, sometimes it's audits, all these things coming together. And the best way I can describe security is like each thing you do in security is another layer of Swiss cheese. And you are trying to get enough layers of Swiss cheese on top of each other that all the holes are covered by one layer or another. And I'm not sure what piece of Swiss cheese Balancer didn't have in their sort of quiver that they would have stopped this. That's the part that's really, it's making you, it's having us question everything again. Like, what do we deem as safe in DeFi? And I think the thing that I am taking away from it is I never want to be in a position where we feel like we've done enough security. I feel like that a lot of security issues can also grow from arrogance. I don't want to go too much into detail, but I was talking to an engineer recently at an event and they were describing that they got hacked, and I asked them some questions about it and trying to understand, right? It's like, what was the engineering environment? What was the security stance? And there were some things that he said that really were like red flags. And I was like, fuck, man. There was also something that I think was really missing, which was there wasn't a curiosity of what they could have done better. It was more of a dismissiveness of what they did do. And it was almost like that's, I think, the thing that I always try to remember is that a lot of this is being curious of what we can do better. And at the same time, like, we don't have a product yet. So we're not in a position we don't have revenue, right? So
Yep.
all the dollars that we have been investment dollars, right? And because of that, there's an infinite amount of money that you could spend on security. And I think in Balancer's case, I'd be very curious what the dollar number is, but I bet you it's in the millions of dollars that they spent on security. And if you only have raised to date, we've raised around 4 million. So we can't spend millions of dollars because like that, we wouldn't have the money to build the product and to market it. So there's always this really balance. And I think the thing that we talked about the other day when this came up, and Alexi, you were on this call, but it's like the thing that I'm committed to is that we'll never stop spending money on security, but we can't spend more than we have. And so what does that look like when we launch? It looks like bug bounties. It looks like potentially looking to the security community again once we launch the product and putting a sort of not a trivial amount of money, but not millions of dollars, and then saying, hey, can you maybe doing a capture the flag campaign where we reach out to security auditors and say, there's real money in it. Can you get it? Is there something that we missed? And just continuing to look for ways of what's next, bug bounties, right? Making sure that we have a way of, sometimes the difference between a black hat and a white hat is the dollar amount for the bug bounty, right? If that bug bounty was just a little bit higher, would that person not have exploited the protocol and instead taken a healthy bounty? Yeah, and I don't know if that's helpful, but it is, I think there's something I think, about where we're at, that you're always looking for what's next. There's a lot of AI stuff happening now in the security community. We're talking to all those teams. We've had all the AI tools that I'm aware of scan our code to look for something that maybe a manual audit wouldn't produce. Frankly, I don't think those tools are quite ready right now to make a huge impact. We haven't seen anything come out of those scans where it was like, oh shit, that this was missed by manual audits and this was missed. I think the one that we had recently from a AI scanner was that potentially, like, we should use a transfer of ownership on a permissioned role, that there's one configuration in our contract. There's two configurations in our contracts that can be set by a permissioned role. And they suggested using a different version of transfer of responsibility, which is, it was one of those things where I was like, okay, yeah, this is probably something that we should do, but this doesn't lead to an exploit, right? This is just leads to us not transferring to the wrong fucking wallet because we fat fingered the address, and then they now all of a sudden, like, it's no one can set these configurations, and we bricked that feature. This is bad, but it's not an exploit like balancer. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point. This is my thoughts. I think I'm still trying to process it. The preliminary findings that I saw, and to be honest, I haven't dug deep because it seemed like at first everything that was like, every post-mortem that first came after the hack was AI slop. And so I was waiting to see more reputable accounts starting to post. I saw a really nice TLDR by somebody that looked like this was a rounding issue, that to handle tokens with 6 decimal precision instead of 18, and that when they were rounding back and forth, they were getting, and so doesn't really surprise me the amount of grief that rounding directions has given us already, that we've really put a lot of thought into rounding. I think that our last audit, we had one rounding error that was concerning around liquidations that was luckily caught, but it's incredible how much rounding one direction versus another can be the difference between a safe protocol and a hack. So the stakes are really high. The amount of thought that goes into rounding directions and these subtle nuances is very high. We have a PR right now that we're having a discussion about whether it was, we fixed the rounding direction, but we had the question whether the test that was checking it was of a high enough quality, or if it could be more robust and be checking for other edge cases, even though we just fixed the rounding error. So we're always talking about testing. We're always talking about these nuances. And I think that's what our approach is: staying curious, constantly looking for ways of thinking outside of the box, using all the tools at the disposal, whether it be AI, manual audits, competitions, or bug bounties, right? And trying to do everything we can with the budget we have.
Yep. And I think that throughout the months there have been questions about bug bounties and various competitions. I know we did the Cantina thing, but that was audit, but that was a little different to just like us saying, hey, come find, just open to the community. And I think that there are some people within the community, at least, that have been looking forward to that. But once we have the capacity for it, we will. One question I have based off of what you said. So you said that you think that this has set the space back 6 months to a year. Do you mean, it sounds more like you mean not just it set us back in terms of wider adoption or mass adoption, but also just in terms of the expectations and the industry standard and approach towards security within the space? Is that right? That you think that generally the expectations will be stricter and higher than before, and therefore, yeah.
I mainly meant that like I said, I stole this from somebody's tweet that it resonated, but I think that the adoption of DeFi, right? If you just look at all of finance, we're a very small speck on that map of all the money in finance in general. But I personally believe that this is the future and this is the way everything's going to go. And that's just a matter of time before that little speck grows into a massive market. And I think that one of the biggest things holding us back is these 9-figure hacks, 10-figure hacks that have, I don't think we've gotten 10. I think 9 is the biggest, but these 9-figure hacks are, I think if you're managing money, right, whether it's a hedge fund, a financial advisor, an ETF, all these different people in the financial realm that are looking at this industry, and then you're saying, oh, I can't really use this because all the money could end up in North Korea or I don't think we know the identity of this hacker yet, that hack balancer. That is a huge deterrent from using DeFi. And so that I think that without having a way of being able to tell people that like their money is safe, like we're restricting our ability to grow and be the sort of North Star of the industry the North Star of finance that we think we should be. And so that's what I mean by that. My hope is I think the security community is constantly trying to improve and evolve. I know that when I was a software engineer in just my prior role outside of DeFi, like there were standards, security standards. There was like the OWASP top 10 of the most common ways things were exploited. And I think we're starting to have that in DeFi. Reentry is a huge one. Like reentry attacks are a huge thing that happen over and over again. But I don't know if we have the OWASP top 10. And what that is just like the most common mistakes, right? And teaching people about the most common mistakes, because often in security, it's not like these nuanced, like I think Balancer is a more very sophisticated technical like attack. It's very different than some of the other ones, but a lot of other examples of attacks have been like unaudited, right? So the most common thing is like audit your code, right? So if you go to Rect News, you'll see, a lot of the attacks are on unaudited code, right? So first thing you do, audit your code, right? And then what do? The second one is make sure there's not reentry attacks, right? Those are like the two. But a lot of that still is being discovered, right? Is we're still trying to discover things. And this may be controversial, but like I think we need Balancer to get hacked in order to understand what the next level of standard that we need to develop is. If only we had this standard in place and people were doing this, Balancer wouldn't have happened. That's unfortunately part of this, is that you have to see these attacks to understand where the vulnerabilities are.
Yeah. And it definitely, one aspect, I don't think it feels good, but it is, or is reassuring, but it makes you feel like we were right to do that extra audit, to take those extra precautions, every precaution we could from our end in terms of security leading up to initially launching. So that's nice, at least in an odd sense. I know that we're low on time. We started a little late because of the technical issues. So quickly, we're going to run through some questions. I don't think we have that many. I think all of them probably, unless I'm missing something, are related to Mainnet and TGE, because that's all people really want to know. Just to reiterate, Mainnet, and Will, if I say anything that's slightly off schedule, then correct me, but will be December, and TGE will be 3 months after that. So currently that would likely be early March. Yeah.
Yes, and caveat star based on what the security auditors getting their approval.
Yep.
Because as we said, it's the thing that doesn't keep me up at night is I don't worry about not being successful. If we launch a product and the market doesn't respond, then that is what it is. Like I can't necessarily fix that. I have a perspective about the market. I think I understand what the market is craving, and that's innovation, that's capital efficiency, that's more tools to use within this like growing financial use cases that DeFi is filling. And I think we have all those. What keeps me up at night is being successful, and then getting hacked, right? We will delay TGE and our product as many times as we need to until the engineers feel confident that like we have checked all the boxes.
But with that being said, it is, if all goes to plan, caveat, this December is the plan.
Yes.
All right, terrific. I don't think this has been a full hour, but just because I don't know if you have something you need to run to, Will, but I think we'll start closing this out in terms of final words and some updates for you guys. So definitely keep an eye on our Discord and our Twitter. We are going to be launching a couple of, or at least a campaign next week. I think we're going to be doing the final bit of our campaign with Acre that we've been running. It's been delayed about 2 or 3 different times because of technical issues with some ideas that we had that would have been really cool, but we had to find a different way to actually go through with them. And then we ended up finding ways that should make things work, which is fantastic. And then in terms of today, actually, speaking of Balancer, I think we are planning to send out a little poll. We've done some polls over the last few months, and this one is purely based off of what people think the most impactful hack has been, and Balancer is on there. So keep an eye out for that, and definitely go vote and give us your thoughts if you think it's something that isn't on there, because I think we've just listed the biggest and baddest there. In terms of places to go, you can go check out ammalgam.xyz, and you can find everything there. You can find our newsletter, our blog, our Discord, obviously the DApp. Go check it out, test it. It's on testnet still, on Sonic, on Sepolia, on Will can tell me if there's anything else at the moment, because I don't know what else we have support for. I think we had Monad, but I think we might have turned it off. Yeah, go check it out. Go test things. Go in Discord and tell us what you think. If something doesn't work, let us know. If something does work and you love it, also let us know. I think we'll be collecting some user feedback, another round of that in the next week or two. So yeah. Any final words from your end, Will?
I don't think so. So I think this is a Q&A. I don't know if we had any questions, but if you do have questions, we always, like Alexi said earlier, we're always looking for those questions to get answered in Discord. So feel free to join Discord, ask your questions there. If you need to open a ticket, you can. We try to get those promptly, unless they're just shilling shit, which many of them are. But if people have legitimate questions, we do try to really pay attention to that and answer them. And we also are doing an engineering call twice a week in Discord, where the engineers actually present what they're doing. So we are really trying to be open and build in public, and we'll continue to do that, and really appreciate everyone being here and listening to us rant about marketing bots and fucking hacks.
Yeah, I think you said it was that we did the engineering call twice a week, by the way, by mistake there, but it's once every other week. Yep. So do go check that out. The next one will be next Friday, same time, 30 minutes before this one was supposed to start. And then next month, we will have another monthly AMA. I think next time we'll try and do it on X again. I thought this ended up working quite well after we got over the technical issues. I think that it might have actually been an X problem, just due to the fact that even when people were speakers, they weren't loading in for me. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, next month we'll have a guest on is the plan, a cool guest. So we've got a couple in mind that we're speaking to. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, see you guys next week for the engineering call in Discord. Thank you everyone so much for listening, and have a great rest of the week. How do I close this? No. I've never. Oh, there we go. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.